Greetings, duelists, and welcome to another video. Before we get to today's subject, I kind of want to give a disclaimer to everybody watching the videos. Not everybody sees the pinned comment on my videos. I just came back from a family vacation trip, and I did change the settings in my OBS or the settings on my PC. So the audio quality is going to be slightly different. I'm still using my webcam microphone because out of all the microphones I have on hand is the one that has been working the best with OBS at the moment, and I don't want to be switching around with my equipment because that would just delay more and more videos that I want to make, and there are so many videos I want to make. I do have an audio expert that I know that will be helping me with this. So thank you for your patience and your time and consideration in watching this video. So without further ado, let's get to today's topic. Greetings, duelists, and welcome to another video. So in May 15th of this year, which is exactly 3 months prior to this video being recorded, YouTuber named Sonny YGO, who is an OCG player, discussed his thoughts and analysis with Justice Hunters format mixed with Duelist Alliance format. That is the format that we are currently in the TCG. That's not to say that there are no parallels or no differences between both formats. There are some major differences. For example, Maxi is still a card that is present in the OCG, while number 67, Paradise Smasher, is a card that is currently legal in the TCG. Those are already two big differences. The Magistus engine, or like the second wave of Magistus cards from the OCG, are present over there, which does change a few meta strategies, like some that I will mention later on. Well, some cards we just we don't have those cards in the TCG. Sky Striker Ace Camellia is another example, so on and so forth. So before I get to the topic at hand and talk about the merits behind this video, I'm going to do the same thing Sonny does for his videos and give the big disclaimer that this video is basically his own opinion. It's not an opinion that is a heraldry for OCG players or a heraldry for TCG players. It's just a really good opinion that he shared on a really good video that a lot of people actually found positive. And the reason I'm making this video is because another really good YouTuber, I will post all the references in the description, GGYGO, shoutouts to him as well. He made a very, very similar video to what Sonny did, literally less than 24 hours ago from this video being recorded. Now, when Sonny talked about his opinion of the format, he brought up that true deck diversity is now present as opposed to past formats. And the other thing that he brought up that was really good this format was how the more popular decks at the moment are more engine heavy decks than those like one card combo decks that just slopped in a lot of non-engine. If you look at the screen in his video, you see Draco Tail, you see Yomi, you see Malice, and you see Vanquish Soul Canine. With the exception of Malice, and I say exception with a grain of salt because some Malice variants are way more heavier on their builds with their engine than not. Every single deck shown on the screen is a deck that is primarily built with their engine in mind. The one that plays the most non-engine at the moment is Yomi. And if we look at the OCG at the moment, This is Road to the King, for those who don't know. Uh, Yummy is right now the best deck in the OCG. And right now, in the current TCG, it's a deck that a lot of people like really like. Uh, like you'll probably see a lot of like top tier videos or tier list videos, and in most of these videos, you will see Yummy like in like a really high position. Now, I kind of want to talk about the format myself because it has been 1.5 weeks where we're about to enter the second week after the release of Justice Hunters. Right off the bat, I can say for sure that Yomi is a very popular deck in the TCG. It's probably the most popular deck in the TCG at the moment. It's the deck that most people have been comfortable with. It's the deck that I've seen been doing as successful in major events. And like so far, the merits shown from what has been happening in the OCG kind of makes sense for the TCG, at least in as far as Yummy standards go. There are some big exceptions that we've seen out here, like so far. Like if you have been paying attention to the OCG, you would already know that Vanquish Soul Canine has been a very, very popular deck. It has been pretty much the best deck right before Yummy. And you can even say that it's probably better than Yummy. In the TCG, there are actually less players incentivized to play Vanquish Soul than we do have in the OCG. And the big reason for that is because Vanquish Soul is one of those engine heavy decks where you have to play very specific cards in it. And the deck does have a consistency issue. Like the deck does have a fallout in its game plan. If you don't open Holisu or you don't open like Izuna paired with like a Vanquish Soul starter, like for example Rosin, your odds of winning those games are dropped by 30% at least. The other deck I want to talk about is Dracotail, and I won't go into too much detail with the Dracotail because I want to talk about this a little bit more later on. Dracotail is a deck that actually dropped in popularity in the OCG by a lot. However, in the TCG, it's actually been highly represented. Like, for example, Julian Cahan and Lucas Sato rated the K9 Dracotail deck like really high on their list. And I already seen that deck win a couple of regionals, top out a couple of regionals. And not only that, I've seen enough Dracotail variants doing so well that I actually do think Dracotail is as popular here as it was in the OCG. But take this with a grain of salt because Dracotail was the most popular deck from Justice Hunters when it debuted in the OCG, right next to Young. Now, let's talk about a few other points that Sonny has made. Uh, Besides the engine heavy mention, which is really good in the game at the moment, he also brought up how card interaction between both players are now more and more like prevalent. People are now like facing each other with their strategies, and it's not really becoming like a blowout of just how powerful one deck is besides the other. It's more about engine trades and non-engine trades between multiple decks and which one can play better with their deck, like besides the other player. Prior to this, on past formats, we have been seeing basically like a simulation or like a simulacrum on if we can beat the deck going first or not. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to swap out my screen real quick. If you see here on the screen, you're looking at different decks that I have on the table. These are all decks that I have available to me that are really good meta justifiable contenders. If we go back to the tier list videos, and you see like multiple of these tier list videos being made, I already did the count and I already did like the estimate. There are around 20 to 25 decks that YouTubers have been naming as possible viable contenders for this format. That is a lot of decks. Like, before Justice Hunters, you could have said that Mitsurugi variants and Malice variants were pretty much the two decks that were gatekeeping the format. That's not to say Raizio variants are not here, but Raizio Mitsurugi is like the most popular one, if you like know that already. If you were not playing Mitsurugi Raizio or you were not playing Malice, you needed something to beat those two decks prior to Justice Hunters. If you didn't do that, you were pretty much losing, or you were not in a favorable position this format, because those two decks were really strong powerhouses. What changed? What did Justice Hunters do to make these decks like not the biggest gatekeeps like now compared to like other formats? I think the answer is a little bit simple. And for those who have not picked up on why that answer is in there, it's because of these cards. Prior to Justice Hunter format, Moch armies were pretty much a staple in your deck. And if it wasn't Moch armies, it was Droll and Lockbird. If these three cards were not in your deck, you were not beating Malice, you were not beating Mitsurugi variants, you were not beating Raizio variants. And that's not even mentioning the lower combo decks like Memento, Mermail, Atlantean, Lunalight, Orchest variants, just to name a few decks. These three cards that are really strong against the previous format decks are not that good against the Justice Hunter decks. If you're activating any of these cards, you're falling victim to Izuna, like K9 17 Izuna, which means like the K9 strategy is just going to punish you for using those cards, and your opponent is going to take advantage of that. Yomi and Draco Tail are two other decks that really don't get hurt by these cards because they can just put up multiple interruptions with very minimalistic effort and not just fall victim to these cards. So that's already one really big factor. If the three cards that are really good against the older format decks are not going to be as good for the Justice Hunter decks, then the Justice Hunter decks are going to take a really big swing of advantage because the engines behind those three decks are very respectable. Yomi is a really strong one-card combo deck. The ceiling behind Yomi is lesser than one behind Malice, for example. But if a one-card combo deck that can play enough non-engine can play really well into the non-engine that is popular in the format, then by default, that deck is already going to have an advantage. If we talk about Draco Tail, and you probably already seen enough of my videos by now to know this, Draco Tail is just one of those decks that has really strong blowouts, like in their engine. Like if you're resolving Rahu Draco Tail or you're resolving Ketu Draco Tail, like that's a lot of card advantage against what your opponent has on their board. It's pretty much the same as Chadols back in 2014, if you played that format. Uh, Chadols were really strong in 2014 because there were a lot of engine cards that they had in their arsenal that was just really strong against the decks that were popular the format prior, like Hat format. And it's pretty funny to mention that format because pretty much the same thing is happening right here. If you played in 2014, Hat format was a very strong format. Like the Traptrix Artifact deck was the deck to play back then. If you were not playing that deck, or you're not playing anything close to that, you were not doing so well. But out of the blue, without even needing a ban list, that deck phased out because Burning Abyss, Shadow, and Satellar Knights were just three really strong decks that just played well into the engines and non-engines that were played that format. This is a very similar situation to that. So the other thing to note is that those older decks are still respected, and there are enough tools to play into the other decks that can just do well into those previous decks. If you're resolving like your K9 cards, the K9 engine is already really strong against something like, for example, Mitsurugi, that already thrives with hand or graveyard effects. Just to give an example. Vanquish Soul winning the European WCQ just further cemented this. That is a strategy that can play well with K9s and can play against K9. Well, K9s can do well against because the best Vanquish Soul monster is Holisu, and Holisu is an effect from the hand. So that already alone makes it like a catalyst for K9 decks. And also like a complement for K9 decks. Older decks like Crystron received a really massive power boost because of Justice Hunters. Like prior to K9's existence, this was a tier 2 deck at best, or a tier 1.5 deck at best. Crystron is a really, really strong deck. It has really strong engine cards that just do well into the format. The issue with Crystron is that it was not well positioned against the non-engine that was in the format. Like, for example, the Charmies, Droll, Artifact Lancia, just to give you like 3 really good examples. The K9 cards changed and helped the dynamic of Crystron because it gave it a second wind and now made the strategy just a lot stronger and a lot more resilient, and gave it a very solid game plan with its end board despite getting hand trapped. And if you actually did get hand trapped, then the K9 monsters, Izuna and Lupus, would just punish your opponent for trying to like hand trap the Crystron player. And Crystron already has a card that punishes your opponent for playing hand traps in the first place, which is Tristaros. So just pairing that up with another engine, that already makes this strategy very viable. But Crystron is one of those decks that if you don't hand trap them or you don't stop them, their end board is one of the best end boards you're going to see this format. Like, the end boards that Crystron K9 can make are very, very powerful. I would even say it rivals the Malice end boards. Alright, so now that I mentioned all of this, I kind of want to talk a little bit more on Draco Tail, since I didn't bring up too much about Draco Tail when I was talking about the other videos. Out of every single deck I own at the moment, Draco Tail is the one I've been enjoying the most. And the main reason because of that is because the deck is very, very creative. The deck has a lot of like justifications with a lot of engines, and this deck is not even solved right now. If we go here to YGO's video, he actually did a YouTube post like I think 1 or 2 days ago, and it was a Tearlament deck with Draco Tail cards. We haven't seen Tearlaments do anything since the banning of like the Ichizu Miller cards. So just to see like Tearlaments again back in action as another strategy is really cool. I actually really like that. I'll give you a hint on my next deck report. My next deck report is going to be a Draco Tail deck involving these cards. So stay tuned for that very soon. I won't go in depth with that, with the explanation of why I'm playing these cards, but the fact that I can play these cards in a deck and just do well with them just already makes me feel very comfortable this format. Like prior to this, you probably were not going to see Tearlaments cards, you probably were not going to see Dragoon, you probably were not going to see like fusion decks that outside of Lunalights and Gem Knights. Like if it was not Lunalight and if it was not Gem Knight, you probably were not going to see a fusion deck do well this format before Draco Tail. Draco Tail really changed that dynamic and really just made the older strategies or older hybrids really good and really viable, which is one of the reasons I really like Draco Tail. The other reason I really like Draco Tail, and this is something that you should know about me as a player, not only do I like to have fun with the strategies that I play, I actually like playing strategies that has the least amount of weaknesses, or if it does have weaknesses, it has the amount of weaknesses that I am comfortable with. Back in 2013, I played Vanquish Soul as a strategy, and I did make a video talking about that, and I might post that video in the description, as well as like the other videos that I'm referencing. In 2013, at the very beginning of the format, when Tearlaments got heavily hit on the Forbidden Limited list, Kashtira was the most popular deck, but I did not want to play Kashtira because Kashtira had a huge target on its back. But I realized that the Kashtira cards were really good. So I was trying to find a strategy that could play well with the Kashtira cards. For 6 months, I played Scareclaw. And Scareclaw was a really good deck because not many decks had an out to try hard. Nibiru was not really that popular because it wasn't that strong against Kashtira. At least smart Kashtira players knew how to play around it. Board breakers were good against the deck, but not to like a large degree. And just every deck that was in the format was just very comfortable for me. Like I didn't have an issue facing Super Heavy Samurai. I didn't have an issue facing Purely. I didn't have an issue facing Gold Pride. I didn't have an issue facing like strategies very similar to those. So that kind of brings up to why I played Vanquish Soul back in 2013, 2023. When Mannadium became a popular deck later that year, a lot of people were playing Droll and Lockbird in their deck. And for those who don't know, Droll and Lockbird really, really hurts the Scareclaw deck. That card is pretty much kryptonite against our deck. What Lancia was to Ritual Beast and Malice, Droll was to Scareclaw. And I just went one night at locals, I got Drolled 7 times, and I told myself, I want to play a meta strategy, but I don't want to lose to Dimension Shifter. I don't want to lose to Droll and Lockbird, and I did not want to lose to Dimensional Barrier. That's where Vanquish Soul came in, and I played Vanquish Soul for an OTS tournament, and I topped that OTS tournament. I sadly lost on top 8 because of an deck list error, but I felt really comfortable with the list. I think the deck was really good. I actually won a game against like a synchro deck that just hand looped me with that deck by top decking Wakaushi. Uh, but enough of the tangent. Let's go back to Draco Tail. So right now, I feel as comfortable playing Draco Tail as I am with every other deck that you see here on screen. I don't lose to Mosh Armies, which is a really good upside with the deck. Dimension Shifter does hurt, but Dimension Shifter is now limited. That card is not going to be resolving as much as other cards that are silver bullets against our deck. People are still figuring out the format, and we still have other really strong viable strategies. So those heavy cards that really hurt Draco Tail, like for example Retaliating Sea and Dimensional Fissure, are just not going to be popular for now. Maybe in the upcoming weeks it could be popular. It really does depend. And the other thing that really fascinated me about Draco Tail, and the reason I really liked this deck, is despite it not being a one-card combo deck, it is a deck that is really, really consistent at what it wants to do. Like, I've played over 15 games with Draco Tail, with different Draco Tail variants, and they were all above 40 hertz. At different strategies, like at different events. And if I bricked more than 2 to 3 times, that was already too many times. I don't think I bricked at all, or if I bricked, I think I bricked like once or twice, which just tells you that, you know, I just really like the position of Draco Tail. Is Draco Tail the best deck at the moment? Absolutely not. Is Draco Tail going to be heavily countered later on in the future? Most likely. Is Draco Tail really popular right now and a lot of people experimenting with the deck? Yes, it is. It's really popular right now. But will that stop me from playing Draco Tail? Absolutely not. I think, at least for like the upcoming weeks, if I do have other major events to look into or look forward to, I will keep playing Draco Tail. Because it's just very well positioned to the format. I'm not afraid of any deck in the format right now when I'm playing this deck. And this deck, to this day, has still not been solved. Like, people are still figuring out variants of the deck. I have the K9 card chart right here. I could play Draco Tail K9 if I want. I just chose not to play Draco Tail K9 because I wasn't as comfortable with the deck building consensus to make that variant possible. And that's not to say K9 Draco Tail is not the variant you should be playing or you shouldn't be playing. And this is what I love about this format. I love when people get to be creative and people get to play different variants of whatever decks they wish to play, and nobody can say it's the best deck or is the best choice. If anybody says is the best choice or is the best deck, that is strictly their opinion because of their experiences, and I don't think that is a debatable argument. I think it's just one of those things where people are going to agree if they see the same experience from them, or disagree if their experience just becomes different. But yeah, that's pretty much it from this video. I just wanted to talk about this video because right now some players are looking at this format, and again, a big disclaimer, I'm not talking for these people. These are just their videos that they made, and these are their opinions that they shared. But some people here really, really like this format as opposed to other formats we've had in the game. And honestly, I kind of do share the sentiment. I actually do feel like this format is not that bad at all. Uh, this format is far from perfect. There are things that need to be fixed this format. Like, I think, let's see if we can find it. I think it's a little bit farther here. Maybe it's a little bit here. Yeah, over here. GGYGO brought up that some hits do need to be made in order to like clean up the format a little bit. And I actually do agree. Will it be these 4 cards? I don't know. Are these 4 cards justifiable hits? I actually do think they are. Are these the hits that will fix the format? I don't know. And that's the best part about this. When you cannot say for sure if cards like these 4 cards that are on the screen are going to fix the format, that's when you already know the format is already feeling good to begin with. But those are just my 2 cents. I hope you found this video to your liking and understanding. Feel free to comment below and know if you guys are interested in more videos like this, because I am more than free to do them. Shoutouts to GGYGO, shoutouts to Sony. I will post their videos in the description. Yeah, keep practicing and keep dueling.